Okay, so today is November the 11th. I'm a little bit under the weather because I have like this dental abscess, but luckily it's like I'm healing from it, you know. So, and this is like my third attempt at trying to make this recording. I have this slight pain in my mouth, so yeah. I'm trying to. On one hand, I'm trying to like make this recording, right? On the other hand, but in the back of my mind, right, I'm trying to like find the shortest and quickest way of saying what I want to say so that I don't have to like talk for very long, right? But I find that the more I try to do that, the more I end up like, number one, I don't say exactly what I want to say, and then number two, so I try to like, which has led me to like record and record and record. So this is like the third time I'm trying to record it. So this one, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to like endure the pain a little bit. It's not a lot of pain actually, if I'm being honest. It's like this slight throbbing pain, just like very slight, but it's just there at the back. Yeah, it's just the ginger me for back. Do you understand? So let's get into it. So the project I'm working on now is called Video GPT, but I'll be done with it very soon. So the next project I'll be working on is Podcast GPT, right? So a few months ago, right? I think this was in August, right? I was in Albania, Tirana in Albania, right? I made this voice memo app and then it had this feature in it that allowed you to like generate like a podcast essentially, between two people or three hosts, as the case might be. And I made that. I think I made a video about it and I put it on Instagram. And I remember like also making like a demo podcast and I uploaded it on the internet. But that was in August, right? Now in the AI world, like, and now we're in November, right? So in AI, right, August to November is a very long time. It's like a decade, right? So a lot of things have happened. So in the meantime, right, we've had like very, very, very nice tools like Notebook LM, right? So what is Notebook LM? Notebook LM is this like Google AI podcast generator, right? Which lets you you give the AI like a topic, then the AI will go ahead and generate a podcast for you. And podcast the Notebook LM generates is very, very nice. They make a lot of sense actually. They sound very natural. It sounds like as if like it was actually recorded by real human beings, right? Right. Okay, cool. So it's very impressive, right? So if we have tools like Notebook LM, then why on God's green earth am I trying to make another podcast GPT, right? Why am I trying to make another AI generated podcast, right? Okay, cool. So it turns out that we can actually improve on that. We can not improve. I think the word is not improve. We can actually reimagine that, can reimagine the whole AI podcast generating thing, right? Okay, cool. So let me quickly explain how like God brought me to this point, right? So like I said, I haven't been working for a while. I didn't have a MacBook. Luckily I got one, right? I got like a MacBook recently, right? But prior to that time I didn't have any MacBook. So what I'll do, I'll just wake up and I'll like be doom scrolling on Reddit or Instagram or TikTok or social media essentially. So one of those days when I was like viewing Reddit and TikTok-ish, right? I was on TikTok or on Reddit specifically. So there's this subreddit called Kids. I think kids are really stupid or something like that. I've forgotten the name of the subreddit, right? And there was this guy in that subreddit. He said that when he was a child, he would sit very close to his TV. I don't think we don't have time for all this. Essentially, what he was saying was that he thought that he would sit close to his TV essentially as a child anytime he was watching like a live show, right? And he would laugh if the host of the show said something very funny. He would laugh out very loud because he felt that his television, the people laughing in the show on TV, were actually people around the world watching the show like him, right? So he would laugh very loud so that the microphone of his television would capture his voice, and his voice could be included in the laughter of the live audience of the show on TV, right? And everybody on the subreddit, so that was like and everybody on the subreddit were kind of like mocking his like innocence, right? They were like laughing at him, and him too, he was laughing at himself. That's why I posted it in the first place, right? So when I saw it, to me too, I was like, I kind of laughed, and then God was like, it's not funny actually. That I should think about it again. It's not funny, It's something we can actually, it's something we can actually do now, right? With AI, it's something we can imitate now, right? We could use AI to create live audiences, right? So there are two ways this could go. There's the 100% AI generated studio audience, right? That's one way. And then the other way is that there's a human studio audience. Do you understand? So take a show like SNL, for example, right? You could have like the audience, since everybody has like an iPad or an iPhone, right? In today's world, right? Smart devices, smartphones in today's world, right? You could tune in live into like, let's say there's a live stream of SNL, for instance, right? And then if the host says something funny, right? You could laugh, and because it's a live show, right? Your laughter can be captured by the mic, and then it will be played back inside the studio. Do you understand? And we could use AI to filter offensive content. So if you laughed or you said something, if you didn't laugh, instead of laughing, if you said something offensive, right? Because now we have AI, we could use AI to like filter out that content, right? And then you can even get banned instantly or get blocked or something like that. Do you understand? So essentially, we could end up having you could actually have a live an SNL or a live show where the audience are actually around the world, for instance, right? And the AI will do the moderation and make sure that, it is only the desired input that is being captured, right? So if you say something, the AI would ignore that. Like, let's say instead of laughing, you said something, right? The AI will filter everything you said out and just pick the laughter and just put it there, So, right. So that's one way of doing it, right? That's like a human AI hybrid way of generating a live studio audience, right? Now there's also my sister is calling me. People won't let me make this recording. I don't know. I don't even know what to do now. Sorry, let me just cut this. Okay, I think we're back now. Okay, cool. So that's one way of doing it. Now the other way of doing it is, instead of a purely AI generated live audience, do you understand? A live audience that is 100% AI generated, no humans involved, right? No humans involved, right? So back to Podcast GPT. So the way we are reimagining Podcast GPT is that, okay, cool. Instead of just human-generated podcasts, right? Wouldn't it be nice if you could have a live? You could also be able to generate your own live show, like for instance, like your own SNL if you wanted to, or your own opera show, or your own sitcom like Friends. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to do that? Yes, it would be, right? So that's what Podcast GPT is going to be. Is this AI podcast generator, this AI podcast generator that lets you add like a live audience to it. Do you understand? So let's take a podcast, for instance. Let's say you want to create a podcast with a live audience, right? So this would be a podcast where if the host said something funny, right, you would get, the audience will laugh at what the host said in real time, right? If the host said something that was like noteworthy or was like celebratory, right? The audience would applaud the host, right? If the host says something stupid, the audience would like boo the host, right? An audience that essentially responds to what the host is saying, right? Right. And you could use that for a podcast, right? You could use that for an AI generated podcast. In the app, you could use that for an AI generated podcast. You could use it for like making your own live show, an AI generated live show, like your own SNL. You could use that for making your own sitcom, like Friends, where the characters will say something and then you have like an audience laughing, like you hear like, sitcoms like Friends. Okay, cool. So how do we do that essentially? How do you get to doing that with AI? Do you understand? So that's the gist of Podcast GPT. Is a AI podcast generator with a live audience, right? So how do you generate the live audience essentially, right? So there are 3 ways of doing it, right? Back in the day, there was this very popular movie called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? So there are 3 iterations of it. There's the bad one. There's the bad iteration. There's the bad iteration, the bad studio audience, if you will. There's the ugly studio audience. Let's start with ugly. And then there's a bad studio audience. And then eventually there's a good studio audience, right? Right. Cool. So, so let me kind of like break this down. This is going to be a little bit technical, not very technical, but this is just so that when I listen back to this, I can understand what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to do, right? So the way this is going to work is that, so the way AI generated podcasts work is that the LLM, the ChatGPT or the Gemini or whatever AI LLM, large language model that you're using, they usually do most of the heavy lifting. What happens is that you give them a topic and then they go ahead and they generate a script, right? So you can say, generate a podcast about Snow White, right? About 2 hosts discussing Snow White, right? So the AI is going to go ahead and generate a script, right? And then it's going to pretend that is, let's say the name of the first host is Donnie, and then the name of the second host is, Gabby or something, I don't know. So Donnie and Gabby are discussing about Snow White, right? Okay, cool. So the AI is going to generate a line for a line for Donnie, and then it's going to generate another line for Gabby, like a response to Gabby, and just like and vice versa, like that, as the case might be. And then in the end, so once the script is down, right? That's the first process. Then the second process is you take that script and then you feed it to like an AI that can convert text into voice, natural sounding voices, essentially. So you take that script and you divide the script into 2, right? You feed all the parts that belong to Donnie, right, to a male sounding AI that can generate male voices, right? And then you take Gabby's part of the script, all our responses, and then you feed it to an AI that can generate a female sounding AI that can generate female voices, if that makes any sense, right? And then the AI is going to generate all those, like all of Gabby's lines, right? It's going to read it, right, and make them into like small, and generate like small MP3s or small audio files, right? And to do the same thing for Donnie too. And then in the end, you take all those audio files and then you combine them together. And then when you combine them together into one giant audio file, and then that giant audio file, sequentially actually, and then sequentially, and just like that, and then in the end, you would have like a full podcast, right? It will sound very natural. So that's like the nitty gritty of it. That's like the nook and the cranny, the way it works on the inside. That's how, essentially, that's an AI generated podcast, right? Okay, cool. So now that we are trying to reimagine that whole thing, now that we're adding like we're adding an extra to it. Now that extra in this case is literally an extra, actually, is a live studio audience, right? How do we do that? So like I said, there's 3 iterations. There's a good, there's a bad, and then there's the ugly. So the ugly side of this is that you tell the AI, you said, AI, okay, cool. Again, you are an AI and your job is to create this podcast, a natural sounding podcast between the name of the host, male host is Donnie, the name of the female host is Gabby, right? Donnie and Gabby, right? Now generate a podcast, like a 10-minute podcast about Donnie and Gabby discussing Snow White. And the AI is going to be like, okay, and generate a script. But now that we have this extra thing called live audiences, you're going to tell the AI that, okay, cool, don't just generate a script about Donnie and Gabby discussing Snow White. Also, pretend as if there's a studio audience, essentially, right? And then when Donnie or Gabby says something funny, right? Let the studio audience, when they say something, right? First of all, determine if what they say requires the response of the studio audience, right? If it requires the response of the studio audience, then tell us the type of response that fits that context, right? So, for instance, if Gabby says something funny, right, the AI would note that, okay, Gabby has said something funny. Inside the script, it will note inside the script that, look, Gabby has said something funny. What she just said now is funny, right? And then the appropriate studio response to this would be laughter, right? Okay, cool. Or, for instance, in another instance, if Donnie said something stupid, right? If let's say Donnie said something stupid, right? The AI would say, okay, Donnie has said something stupid. And then what's the response to it? Well, the response would be to boo Donnie, right? Wouldn't it? Yeah, that would be the response, right? Or, and like that. Yeah? Okay, cool. And then we will so the way we'll do that is, so the simple way or the bad way of doing this is that, online now, there are a lot of like websites that have all these pre-recorded response, live sound effects, essentially. So for instance, if you watch Friends, like I've said, Friends is a sitcom, like it's a very popular sitcom, right? And then there are the characters in the series here, when they say something funny, right, there's this laughter that plays in the background, right? Now that laughter is not a live audience, it's a pre-recorded laughter. Do you understand? And sometimes if you listen carefully, right, the thing that, okay, essentially the laughter is pre-recorded, right? So if they say something funny, everybody's just going to laugh, ha 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 ha. They're going to play that sound of people laughing in the background, right? Okay, cool. So it's the same thing here. We just go online. The simple way of doing it, the bad way of doing this is I go online and I go to all these sound effects library, like Epidemic Sound, like Pixabay, and then I download all these pre-recorded sound effects. So I'll download laughter, I'll download applause, I'll download booing, I'll download laughing manically, I'll download slow clapping, I'll download like a library of effects or possible sound effects that I think a studio audience might make in response to what the hosts are discussing, right? What the host is discussing, right? And then anytime, and I'll store them inside the app, right? So when the AI generates the script, right? When the AI generates the script, and it says that, so let's say once again, Gabby says something funny, right? And the AI said, okay, the response here is funny, right? What I'll do is I'll just play back, the app will just play back the already downloaded sound effects, the sound effect that I downloaded from Epidemic Sound or Pixabay, that I downloaded from the internet, essentially. So just play it back, right? And voila, and that will work. And then we package everything into one file and give it back to you as your podcast or your live show or your sitcom with a live audience. And that would work, to be honest. If we're honest about it, it would work, right? But the problem with that would be that okay, cool, that would work, right? So that's a bad one. So what makes it bad? Well, because like I said, the live audience response that we're using is not tailored for the podcast itself. Do you understand? It's not live, if you will. Do Do you understand? So for instance, if you watch, the best way to get this is to get this problem is Friends. If you watch Friends, right, the sitcom, there are sometimes the characters will say something funny, right? But the type of what they said was funny but not so funny. But you always hear the same laughter, the same type of laughter every time. Now, that doesn't happen with the live studio audience, right? The live studio audience, their response, their laughter or their anger or their clapping or whatever response is always commensurate to is always contextual, number one, and it's always very commensurate to the degree of what the host is saying. So if the host says something very funny, right, the audience will laugh manically. You would literally hear them like being hysterical about it, right? If you said something mildly funny, right, you will hear them respond. They will laugh for it to be mild, you know. If you said something that was applause-worthy, yeah, they would clap, right? But if you said something like, oh, everybody's going home today with like a gift, for instance, right, they'll clap wildly because, you know, that's something that means that it's a freebie, right? So they'll be because they are happy now, they'll clap wildly, right? So essentially, that's like a problem. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that not only are we just, you know, appropriating responses, we're actually appropriating contextual responses to live studio responses, essentially, like a contextual live studio response. So for instance, in a podcast, if what's her name now? If Gabby says something funny, right? It says something mildly funny, then the response is going to be mildly funny. If you say something hysterical, right, the response is going to be, the studio audience is going to be manical, right? And also, the app will allow you to set the size of the studio audience, right? So let's say you want a studio audience of like, let's say you just want to be like a chill podcast, like the chill, let's say the user is like a woman, right? And she just wants to make like a chill podcast between her and her homegirls, right? So the host is a girl, the other host is also a girl, and then the studio audience is just like there are 5 friends in a living room, right? So in total, it's just 7 people, right? You have 2 people, 2 hosts, and 5 studio audience, right? Yeah. In that instance, it would be inappropriate if that is the studio audience, right? To be inappropriate to play back a studio audience of a pre-recorded studio audience of 500 people laughing at the same time. No, you just want 5 people laughing. Do you understand? So the way to do that is not to use a pre-recorded or pre-downloaded live audience response, right? The way you do that is by generating the live audience response, right? Is by going ahead and generating the live audience response. Let me, you know what, to illustrate this properly, I'll go upstairs right now. I'm downstairs right now. I'll go upstairs right now and I'll play back like a pre-downloaded sound effect of an audience laughing, yeah, and then I'll play back an AI generated an AI generated tailored sound effects of an audience laughing. Just give me a second. I'll pause this and go upstairs now. Okay, so here's like a playback of a pre-recorded studio audience laughing. This is I'm getting this sound effects from Pixabay, by the way. I'm playing for my TV. Okay, so that's the sound effects file from Pixabay. Now, like I said, this would make sense. It would make sense once if I said in the podcast, if the host says something funny, right? It would make sense, right? But let's say, like I said, let's say the studio audience, for a generic studio audience, but let's say the studio audience was just like 5 people. You want a studio audience, you want a podcast and a studio audience of just 5. Well, the people laughing here is more than 5. Do you understand? So what you want to do in that instance is an AI-generated studio audience. Finish. Or an AI-generated, you want to AI-generate it. Okay, cool. So there's an AI example of an AI-generated studio audience, a live audience of 5 girls. Let's be specific. Or 5, or let's make it 10. of 10 girls, right? You want girls. Let's say you want only girls. Let's say it's a girl podcast, or guy. Let's say it's like a Joe Rogan podcast, for instance. You're trying to make your own Joe Rogan podcast, right? And you want only guys inside it, right? Okay, a live audience of, but let's just do girls. Let's say a live audience of 10 girls laughing manically. A live studio audience. Okay. I'm using stable diffusion, stable audio to generate this, by the way. Okay, so I generated it, but it wasn't very clear. I'll still let you listen to it. So the AI generated it was not very clear because I didn't really fine tune it. But this is it. Just listen. Okay, so it sounds like witches laughing. But I also made a live audience of 100 people laughing manically. This is AI generated, so that was a little bit clearer. So let me play that back instead. Okay, cool. So essentially, you get the gist. The gist is, instead of using already generated assets, right? You could have the AI generate something that generates a live audience that is contextual to a live audience response that is contextual to whatever is being said in the AI podcast or AI live show or AI sitcom. Do you understand? Right. So that's the gist. So we've done the bad. The bad version of this is the ugly version of this is the ugly version of this is using pre-downloaded assets from sound effects, like from sites like Pixabay, Epidemic Sound, stuff like that, right? That's the ugly version. The bad version would be to have the AI generated, right? And then the good version of this would be to I don't want to touch on it. I don't want this recording to go beyond 30 minutes, but OpenAI has something called real-time API, which essentially allows for it allows the AI to for you to interact live with the AI. So there's a whole way you can manipulate. I don't want to get into it, like I said, manipulate it essentially. So it's going to be built time, right? So essentially, what I'm going to do is when I bought for the podcast GPT, we are going to use the middle version. That's what we're going to start with. We're not going to do the bad version. We're not going to do the we're going to do the bad version, the middle version. So the AI response, the studio audience is going to be AI generated. We're not using pre-recorded assets. The AI responses are going to be AI generated. Yeah. So like I said, like the example I gave earlier, you could specify the size of the audience you want. If you want 100 people laughing manically, you could get that. If you want just 3 people booing the host when they say you want a studio audience of just 3 people, fine, you get 3 people. And then because this is going to be AI generated, the response could be live, it could be real. So it won't be limited to just like things like laughing, clapping. No. It could be, you could have people hissing, you could have people smirking, you could have, it's going to be so dynamic, it's going to be so nice, essentially. So that's that. The name of the app is Podcast GPT. I should have like a demo up by, what's today? I think today is Monday. I'll have one up. I think I'll put a demo up on Instagram before the end of this week, hopefully. Yeah. So Podcast GPT. I'm currently working on a project now, Video GPT. I should be through very soon. Hopefully my teeth heals up very fast, but yeah, I should be so true very soon. So that's it. Also, I forgot to add that the podcast does not always have to be AI generated, right? So the app would also have a mode, which is just reaction mode. So let's say you have a podcast, right? That is, you have a normal human podcast and you just want a studio audience, right? The app will be able to listen to whatever you're saying, whatever the host is saying, maybe you and your friend, whatever you're saying in real time, and then reacts to it in real time. So if you need to laugh, it will laugh, you need to laugh, stuff like that. If you need it to clap, it will upload it. So you could just feed your podcast, when you're done recording your podcast, you could feed the audio file to the app, and then the app will will add the appropriate contextual AI generated live audience responses to your podcast essentially. So that's like live mode, and um, you could use things like Apple has this like really cool. They have these speakers, but their speakers have something called spatial audio, right? So spatial audio could actually come in very handy with this AI generated responses. So you can actually use this to simulate like a live audience. You could actually, because spatial audio can actually simulate like, it helps like simulate like in different environments essentially. So you could actually simulate like a live audience. You could make like your own. You and your friend, like let's say you have a friend and you want to have, or only you want to have your own Sunday Night Live or something. You can actually do it now. You just have to get like a couple of like, I don't know. You get like a couple of Apple speakers and then with partial audio essentially, and this podcast GPT app that I'm making, and then you could have like your own. You can have your own AI generated studio audience essentially. So that's it, ish, right? Like I said, hopefully this Friday I can get it out. When I say get it out, I mean to the App Store. Like hopefully I can get it out to the App Store. I have a feeling I'm going to have to use stable diffusion, stable audio for the AI audio generation, but I'm not sure yet. If I find an alternative, I'm going to use it. But right now, I think the stable diffusions, like stable audio. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so there's a little update. I just discovered that 11 Labs has like a text to sound effect, right? So I just generated, just to demo it, right? The prompt is a live audience of 5 girls laughing hysterically. So this is essentially, the AI is going to generate a sound effect of 5 girls laughing hysterically. This is the first generation. It gave me 1, 2, 3, 4. It has 4 generations there. So I'm going to play back all of them one by one. That's the first one. That's the second one. The third one. That's the fourth one. So let's say a live audience of 100 people clapping. $100 men. Okay, so it's generating it now. I think the generation time is very fast too. It's a lot faster than the stable audio one. So I might end up using 11 Labs, man. Even if it was cheaper. So let's play it back. Again, it has 4 generations here. It took less than 10 seconds. So let's play it back. This is AI generated 100%. So this is a live audience of men clapping essentially. So it's not perfect, but it works. Like it's you can see where this is going, right? So this is what we're going to use. We're going to be using 11 Labs text to sound effects. Yeah. I just wanted to add it. I just discovered it now, so